A lot of the people wonder what ascendant is in Indian astrology. Basically, what I would like to tell you before starting on what ascendant is that anyone who wants to study astrology should first be done with studying astronomy, or at least basics of astronomy, because the entire science of astrology is dependent on astronomy. So if you're not good at astronomy, and if you do not understand how sunrises, sunsets, I mean the very basic things, and how to look at stars with naked eyes and how to form constellations out of them, you would not be doing justice to the science of astrology yourself. Okay, so now let's move to the ascendant. As it is clear from the name, ascendant is something which would be ascending in nature. Okay, ascending means rising upwards. Now, whenever sun rises in the east, okay, let's try to understand this from the entire motion of the sky from the point of view of relativity. Okay, so whenever you are moving, say in a bus or a train, and you look outside, and if you see trees, you will see them moving in the opposite direction to your movement. Okay, that happens because of the relative motion of trees with respect to your motion. So if you are moving forward, relatively the trees are moving backwards, and hence you see them moving backwards. And that is exactly what happens when we see the sun rise, because the sun doesn't rise, that is obvious. The earth moves from the west to east. Okay, so just think of the entire ball of earth as a bus. Okay, and that we are riding that bus. So because we are moving in a particular direction, everything that is outside of it seems to move in the opposite direction. So because the earth is moving west to east, all the stars, the sky, the sun, they seem to move from east to west. Okay, so even in the day sky there are stars, but we cannot see them because of the brightness of the sun. But the entire background to the sun and all the stars, they are also moving east to west. Let's talk about the ascending motion. Okay, so this movement is east to west, but there is another motion because earth is tilted, and that is from the horizon to upwards. Okay, so you can see that in the mid-noon the sun is on the top of your head, while it is actually not there. Because the sun is moving, it is there because of the relative motion of earth with the sun. Okay, so the sun in the morning, when it rises in the east, it starts ascending its journey upwards. It starts ascending in its journey upwards towards the pinnacle, where it reaches in the noon time, and that movement is called the ascending movement. So everything in the sky that rises in the east has an ascending upwards motion, just like the sun has an ascending upwards motion. It rises in the east, and then in the mid of the day we can see it on the top of our heads. After the time that it has attained its ascended position in the sky, it starts descending towards the west, and then the sun seems to set in the west. Okay, and that is why the west is also called the descendant direction. Just like the sign in the east is known as the ascendant, the sign in the west is known as the descendant. The ascendant in the North Indian way of representation in astrology is always represented in a particular way, in a particular position, which now you can see on the screen. So this position is known as the first house. Okay, the ascendant, whether you are dealing with a South Indian chart or a North Indian chart or an East Indian chart, it is always going to denote the first house in the astrology. Okay, and from there, when you start counting ahead, and you are going to go to the second house, third house, and so on. And similarly, when you reach the seventh house, which is just opposite the first house, you reach the descendant. Okay, or basically the western direction where the sun sets. Now, because I use the North Indian chart, and what you are seeing on the screen right now is a North Indian chart, you'll notice that in this first house, which is the ascendant, there is also a number. Okay, So the number is always going to range between 1 and 12, and the number there basically represents a zodiac constellation. For example, the number 1 represents the constellation Aries, the number 2 represents the constellation Taurus, 3 represents Gemini, 4 Cancer, 5 Leo, 6 Virgo, 7 Libra, 8th, the 8th number represents Scorpio, 9th represents Sagittarius, 10 is Capricorn, 11 is Aquarius, and the 12th number represents the Pisces sign. So whatever number in your chart you have in this particular box of first house was the constellation which was rising on the east at the time of your birth. Now, because we have 12 constellations and 24 hours is what they take to go about the entire zodiac, every constellation averages about 2 hours every day on the eastern side of wherever you are. But the rising sign is not only dependent on Earth's rotation, it is also dependent on the place where you are looking at the sky. Okay, so for example, right now in Delhi, a particular constellation would be rising in the eastern horizon, for example. But on the opposite side of the world, the 7th constellation from it would be rising in the ascendant. And somewhere in between the 4th, the 3rd, the 2nd constellations would be rising on the eastern part of the horizon. And when the sun sets in the night sky, if you are living in an area where there's less pollution or no pollution at all, you would be able to see whatever constellation is rising in the east direction from wherever you live. So whatever constellation you see there is the one that is rising there at that time. So if you use any software to calculate the birth chart for anyone for that moment, you would be able to see that particular constellation denoted by the number that represents that constellation in the ascendant of the horoscope. So let's take the birth details for the country India, and let's create the birth chart for India. Okay, so India was declared independent, and we are going to consider that as the time of birth of New India. So that was 00 AM on the 15th of August 1947. And the birthplace would obviously be the capital of India, where all the ceremonies took place, that is New Delhi. So if we create a chart for that time, the ascendant comes out to be Taurus. Okay, so in the chart that you can now see on the screen, this particular house which we highlighted before as well, this is called the ascendant, and you see that the number 2 is written here. Okay, so that number 2 denotes that the constellation in the ascendant at that moment is Taurus. Okay, so Taurus was rising at 00 AM on the eastern horizon from New Delhi on the 15th of August 1947. Okay, so that is the example chart. And similarly, with your birth details or the birth details of anything or anyone or any event or any company or any country, you can create a birth chart, and whatever sign rises here, just refer to the list that is shown on the screen. The number will represent the constellation that is in your ascendant, and the ascendant will represent the first house. Now let's quickly try to understand the philosophical side of it as well. You know, this is the astronomical side, but let's quickly just take a look at what does the ascendant represent actually. Okay, now that we know what ascendant is astronomically, but what does it represent in a birth chart? So as you look at the sky, everything is ascending from the eastern direction. Okay, that is why, because you could ask, why not take the constellation which is in the northern direction? Why not take the constellation which is in the southern direction or the western direction as the ascendant? Because obviously the things that are ascending from the eastern direction relative to us. Okay, so that is the first part. So the constellation in the eastern direction would be taken as the ascendant. Now, what would that mean? You know, that also means that this is the part of you which rises every day, because it is rising from the direction where the sun rises. This is the part of you that rises every day and goes to work. So the ascendant basically represents your entire body. Okay, and the planet Sun also, so by the way, Sun and Moon, terming them as planets is basically flawed. The correct word is Graha. Graha and planets, they are basically entirely different concepts, but because of the poor translation of Jyotisha in English has made the translation for Moon and Sun as planets. So we now, because of the general consensus, we have to use the word planet. So anyway, so because Sun, when it rises in the east in the morning, and generally people also rise during that time, till the mid-noon and go to work, the Sun also becomes a Karaka, or a significator, or a representative of your vitality and your fitness. Okay, so there's these two things, the ascendant and the Sun, both of them rising from the eastern direction, that become significators of your health in your horoscope. Okay, so this is a very quick overview. This is obviously very generalized in nature, and this can obviously, we can just keep going on in depth and keep talking about what the ascendant represents, because it does not represent one thing only, it represents at least 50 different things, and there's many significations that it has, and we are definitely going to take them up in the coming videos. But just to quickly sum up, everything that we see rising on the eastern horizon is because of the relative motion of Earth with these stars and planets, so to say, and the Sun doesn't rise in the east. Obviously, it is the Earth that is moving towards the west, and because of that we see Earth rising from the east, as when you are moving in a bus, you see trees moving in the other direction, just like that, because we are sitting in this bus called Earth, and everything outside is moving in the other direction from the Earth. So that is why we see the Sun rising from the east, and similarly all the constellations and zodiac signs, they rise from the east. The one rising at the time when you are born, that is the sign which goes into the ascendant. Ascendant is also called the first house in your astrological chart, and that is always put in the same place in the North Indian chart, which you can see on the screen. The number in the chart represents your sign, and that ascendant sign is going to represent a lot of qualities about you, and we are going to take them up in coming videos. Thank you so much.